Thank you very much. Kalimera, Eucharisto Parapoli. I have got two preliminary remarks. The first one is, probably you know that Greek is the language of the future. Do you know that? It's the language of the future. But unfortunately, we are still living in the present, and so if you have got a headset, it may become handy for you. Put it on. Feel free to put it on. The second one is, when I was invited, and it was my pleasure, I always come with utmost pleasure to Greece to exchange with you. When I was invited to provide a presentation on bio-waste management by the advisors of ΦοΔΣΑ, they told me, we want you to come there because despite my prominent role at Zero Waste Europe, and I'm working all across Europe from the northernmost regions to the southernmost regions, but I'm an Italian, I look like an Italian, and so they told me, you may sound more convincing for the Greek people because you say una faccia, una razza. So it means whatever may work in Italy may work in Greece as well. And so my goal, my duty today is to make you confident, okay? I want to make you confident you may do that. Okay, so let's start from the basics. And I know I do not have to preach the heathens. You are already converted. You know the importance of bio-waste. Bio-waste is fundamental to meet the European overarching goals and targets, the legally binding target of preparation for reuse and recycling, 65% by 2035. It may look impossible for you right now because you say, we are very far from there. But I will show you how many municipalities, how many provinces, how many regions in Italy are already there. It wasn't done overnight, but it didn't take ages either, okay? So you may do that. Also, it is at the crossroads of various environmental important goals, such as fighting climate change, the common agricultural policy, giving organic matter back to soils. We do not have time today to deepen our views, but I will be ready to answer your questions, if any, during the debate. And you know there is an obligation, not actually for separate collection, but for separate management. Article 22 of the Waste Framework Directive stipulates that bio-waste should be managed separately all over Europe. It is effective January the 1st of 2024. Now, let's zoom in the situation, because that's the global picture, but now let's come to the local picture. From the operational standpoint, the importance of bio-waste is twofold. First of all, it is fundamental from the quantitative standpoint. Bio-waste is the booster for zero-waste programs. It is the booster for circular economy because it's the largest contributor to recycling rates. And without bio-waste, there is no way, let me say that once again, there is no way to get to 65%, which is the legally binding target stipulated in the European Union. But there's also another more important angle, which is an operational angle. Once you get bio-waste out and you decrease the percentage of bio-waste in residual waste becomes much less fermentable, much less stinky, and you can sharply reduce the collection frequency for residual waste. So first of all, you have got cost optimization of the system as a whole. And in second instance, you also have created a further driver for better separation of recyclables, of paper, glass, plastics, because the less you collect the residual waste, the more people will put paper in the proper bin, glass in the proper bin, plastics in the proper bin. And this is what is happening everywhere in Europe when bio-waste is collected. Now, we did many surveys in order to investigate how to optimize the separate collection systems for bio-waste. We did them all over Europe. And you may say, well, people may have different cultural mindsets. You know, the Swedes may be more accustomed to environmental awareness, more educated, the Germans, and something like that. But if you zoom in the same country, this is one of the many surveys you may find on the internet, and it has been collected. You may go to the BioBest website. That was a program funded by the European Union we carried out in order to investigate the possibility to optimize collection for bio-waste all over Europe. And the paradox is the best performing schemes are from Southern Europe, not from Northern Europe. I will give you the evidence of that in a while. But in a same country, if you take a look at the last row, I know it's very, very small, the numbers are very, very small, but the captures may be wide-ranging from 10 kilograms per inhabitant and year up to 90, 100 kilograms per inhabitant and year, with specific regards to kitchen waste, which is the most important. You know, it's the real fermentable stuff in our municipal solid waste. So it's the same country, same culture, same people, same societal context and something like that. So what is the difference? It's the type of system. Some systems, some schemes are designed properly and they are run properly in an optimized way, and some are not. So it's time now to deepen our views in this respect and see what are the key factors to consider in order to optimize your systems for separate collection of the organics. First of all, we may have collection at the doorstep, curbside collection, as they say in the United Kingdom, or bring systems, the big road containers, as it is still the case here, I have seen in Corfu. And we will see what are the different performances in this respect when it comes to separate collection of the kitchen organics. Then you may have commingled collection, food and garden waste, kitchen waste and garden waste, because you may say, okay, it's bio-waste, it will go to the same site, so we may collect kitchen waste and garden waste together, but you will see there are some detrimental implications in this respect. Or you may have dedicated systems for kitchen waste only, and this leads to operational optimization, maximization of participation of people, and maximization of captures of kitchen waste. Then the frequency of collection rounds, which is very tightly related to the type of scheme, whether it is commingled or it is a dedicated system for kitchen waste only. And then what are the additional tools to make the system as user-friendly as possible? Because user-friendliness, when it comes to a part of municipal solid waste, which in essence, it is inherently sticky, dirty, stinky, and something like that. We need to make the system user-friendly. Otherwise, people will not take part in the system. Take it or leave it. That's the reality. Now, let's start with an overview, an investigation of what are the different performances of different systems. And this is from Catalonia. It's not from Italy, just to tell you how widespread it is good practice. Because Catalonia carbon copied the system from northern Italy when it was in the late 90s. I welcomed many delegations coming from there. There was the regional government from Catalonia, which for the first time ever in Spain adopted a regional law which was mandating separate collection of the kitchen organics. But they said, we want to optimize the system. And so they came to Italy because they knew the Italian systems were performing the best way. So they promoted separate collection of the kitchen organics. Still, they have got a little bit a mixed up situation. Most municipalities adopt collection at the doorstep. Some municipalities adopt the road containers. And the differences are remarkable. You know, the captures. With road containers, you only get as little as 40 kilograms or so of kitchen waste a year per person. Whereas it's almost 3 times as much with collection at the doorstep, because it's a more user-friendly system. You come at the curb and you collect it at the doorstep, instead of telling people you have to walk 200 meters away and put your kitchen waste with the kitchen waste of maybe 100 people, 500 people, which makes it a little bit, disgusting. That's the problem. But also when it comes to impurities, and this is important, not only from the standpoint of cost implications, because the higher the amount of impurities, the higher the amount of rejects, and so they will have to be disposed of at a landfill, at an incinerator, and you know that landfills and incinerators, they have skyrocketing prices, But also it is important from the regulatory angle, because you know that the legally binding target stipulated by the European Union is not for separate collection, it is for net material recovery. So it is separate collection minus the rejects. So the higher the amount of impurities, the lower the net material recovery. And so if we have to make an effort in order to get there, it's important to have the material as clean as possible in order to come as close as possible to the legally binding target. Now, commingled versus dedicated collection. Commingled collection is the traditional system in Central Europe because they said, okay, it goes to the composting site, so let's collect them together. It makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I love Germany. I love the Netherlands. They are the countries with the most long-standing tradition in separate collection of the organics. Still, they do know the system is far from perfect and there's so much room for improvement. I'm hosting literally dozens of German cities, Dutch cities, Danish cities coming to Italy to learn how to optimize the separate collection of the kitchen organics. In many other areas, Germany is the example to be regarded, but when it comes to separate collection of the organics, their system is far from optimized. One key performance indicator is the amount of organics in residual waste. You know, after the obligation on separate collection in the Netherlands since 1985, still they have 42% national average organics inside residual waste, which means that the capture rate is remarkably low. And we will see such an indicator in typical Italian systems in a while. In Germany, it is typically around 30, 32, 33%. So, of course, this takes into account also the concentration effect, because residual waste is a concentrated amount relative to the total amount of municipal solid waste. But still, there is a remarkable amount of organics in residual waste. So the captures are far from perfect. In dedicated collection systems of kitchen waste only, there is a specific scheme, a specific collection round for the kitchen organics, and then garden waste is collected another way. You may promote home composting, which is great, because if you have got garden waste, you have got a garden. And so you may tell people, hey, guys, we'll help you, we'll teach you, and maybe we also entitle you to a tax rebate on the municipal waste tax. Why not? That's a financial incentive. Or you may tell people, okay, you go to the municipal recycling center and you take your garden waste there. Or you say, okay, you do not want to do home composting, you do not have the driving license, you do not have a sufficiently big car. Okay, we implement a dedicated collection run for garden waste, but with a much lower frequency than kitchen waste, and only during the growing season. And this leads to optimization. Because take a look at this one. This is a chart that comes from a typical German situation. Commingled collection, food and garden waste. But then, as you can see, in the central urban areas, almost 50% of the total collected bio-waste is garden waste. Okay, fine. But if you move to the outskirts, more than 2/3 is garden waste. Now, what's the problem? Garden waste has got a seasonal pattern. The delivery of garden waste is highest during the growing season, and it's lowest in wintertime. But if you collect them together, you need to provide extra room, big cars, big wheelie bins, and you have to pass by with a compactor, which is a very expensive truck. If you have got a dedicated collection system for kitchen waste only, you have got pretty much a constant delivery of materials. You may use much smaller containers, so you optimize the system, and you may use cheap, open, small lorries instead of big packer trucks. So one first lesson to learn, one first takeaway is you have got funds, you have got budgetary support for your investments, and that's important because the European Union has to support you, the central government has to support you, but there is no one-truck-fits-all situation. The fleet has to be diversified. Packer trucks for bulky materials such as plastics and metals, and small, cheap, open lorries for kitchen waste, okay? Now, I already overviewed what are the benefits of having a dedicated system for kitchen waste only. So since the single collection run basically is much cheaper than with commingled collection, you may increase the collection frequency for kitchen waste. And that makes the system user-friendly. Let me come back to the Dutch situation. In the Netherlands, since they are collecting commingled food and garden waste, They have got a very bulky amount of material, big containers. They need to pass by with compactors. The single collection round is terribly expensive. So the only way to save money is to reduce the collection frequency for biowaste. Do you know what? In the Netherlands, typically, they collect on alternate weeks. 1 week organics, 1 week residual waste. Now, the week when they collect only residual waste, where do you think that people put their organics? They put it in residual waste, of course. And this is why they have got 40 to 45% organics. And they even call it VGF, vegetable garden fruit, because they tell people, don't put meat and fish in the organics because otherwise after 2 weeks it will stink. And so it goes in the residual waste and it goes to incineration. Is it sensible? Does it make sense? It doesn't make sense at all, of course. So there is a different way to optimize the system. Okay, this is the general scheme with a kitchen caddy, a vented kitchen caddy. I can tell you why it has got the vents, but we can discuss during the questions and answers. And then at detached houses, it gets into a bucket. The bucket may be picked manually, and so you save on time and you save on money. Or in the high-rise buildings, you have got a common wheelie bin serving 10, 15 families. So they put all their kitchen waste in the dedicated wheelie bin, and it's put at the curb during the collection day, and then it's collected by the open lorries. Let's always remember, waste is like water. It always flows the easiest way. You have to make it flow easily. So, or I already told you about the importance of the frequency for collection. The collection frequency for kitchen organics has to be higher than the collection frequency for residual waste. Otherwise, people, they will not take part in the scheme. But if the collection frequency for kitchen organics is higher than that for residual waste, there is no reason why they should not be happy to deliver the kitchen waste in the proper bin, of course, because it is collected more frequently. And then let's consider the proper tools to make the system as user-friendly as possible. And in particular, the use of compostable bags or paper bags, because the material is sticky, it's stinky, and therefore we need something to keep the kitchen caddy as clean as possible, to make the system as tidy as possible, as user-friendly as possible. It may be paper bags, it may be certified compostable bags. Thanks God, there is a very trustworthy and reliable certification scheme at European level, EN 13432, and it works since 2002, and so we know what are really compostable plastics to be used in this respect. May this be done also in big cities? Well, this is not the case of Corfu, of course, but you have got Athens. Athens totals a population of 600,000 in the municipality, much bigger in the metropolitan area, but we have the case of Milan. Milan, since 2012, implemented the collection system for kitchen organics, covering 100% of the population, and despite a very complicated situation, because besides the population living in Milan, there are 800,000 daily commuter workers who work in Milan, have lunch in Milan, and produce food waste in Milan. And then 11 million visitors coming to Milan. I was scratching my head because I was saying, but why do they come to Milan? There's nothing to see in Milan, you know, but maybe soccer, something like that. Or, well, we have got the cathedral and the Last Supper by Leonardo, the two masterpieces. And then I found out most of them, they come there to visit separate collection. That was the case, maybe. So, however, despite such a complicated situation, these are the key performance indicators in Milan. Now Milan is at 64% separate collection. The next step will be implementation of pay-as-you-throw. There is already a political mandate in Milan. Already in Italy, there's 1,400 municipalities with pay-as-you-throw, and it's working. So if it works in Italy, una faccia, una razza, it will work also in Greece. Almost 150,000 tons of biowaste collected per year, which, if you take a look at the pie chart over there, means that only 13% of the total organics generated by the city of Milan are not captured by the system. So 87% of the total organic waste generated by the city of Milan is captured and sent to anaerobic digestion and composting. I told you about the percentages of organics in residual waste in typical situations in Germany and the Netherlands. This is the composition analysis of residual waste in Milan. 11% organics despite the concentration effect. In smaller municipalities where the situation is less complicated, they even get lower, down to 5% organics in residual waste. Now, let me go to the end with the key takeaways. We know food waste is the booster for circular economy, it's the booster for zero waste programs, it's the booster to get to the legally binding targets at European level. There is wide room for improvement, also in those countries with a long-standing tradition for separate collection. I never go there, bragging about and telling them, you have to change your system. No, keep your system, but you should know, when I tell my German colleagues, but usually it's them approaching me and telling me, we know there is some imperfection in the system, so we would like to improve, and I give them the same advice I'm giving you about changing the system to dedicated collection of the kitchen organics. But there are opportunities from the design of the collection rounds with specific regards to the collection frequency and the tools, the kitchen caddies, the biobags, and so on and so forth. Now, let me just put some icing on the cake the last minute, because you will say, we are the country of islands. This is why everybody loves Greece. And this is an aerial view of, do you know this one? It's Antiparos, because I went there many years in a row, and that's where I got engaged with my wife. She's Italian, but we fell in love in Antiparos, because instead of the fog of Milan, it was much more romantic than Meltemi, Rezzina, and saying Sagapo instead of Ti amo, and something like that. However, you may say in the islands that might be much more complicated. Actually, already in 2001, there was a specific program for the small islands in Italy, because we do have quite a few ones. Not so many as in Greece, but there's quite a few ones. Elba, Capraia, Tremiti, Ustica, Eolie, and so on and so forth. And we said, first of all, in the islands, waste management should be inspired by circular economy. Everything has to be as circular as possible, because the less you ship to the mainland, the more you save. And composting is a great place to start from, because composting is fully scalable. We do not have time to deepen the views about the possible approaches for scalability of the composting initiatives, but feel free to ask me questions during the discussion, and I will give you all the answers. But there is an outstanding example also of a very touristic area. Do you know this shape? You know what this one is? Sardinia. Sardinia, probably the most touristic island in the Mediterranean. They have got a population of 1.5 million, and they have got 21 million visitors a year. Now, this was the situation in Sardinia in 2003. It was the least performing region in Italy. They only had a 3% separate collection, and all the separate collection was basically done in Oristano, one of the province capitals, because they already had separate collection of the kitchen organics. Now, let's take a look. 2006, 2010. Already in 2010, most of the municipalities were above 60%. And if we take a look at Italy as a whole, in 2024, Italy was already at 67%, almost 68% national average in separate collection. You can see Sardinia, already it's the runner-up, right after Veneto. Veneto is the best performing region, 78%, with a province totaling 90% of a provincial average in separate collection, which is province Treviso. And Sardinia, it says 77%. But also, you can see the number of municipalities above 70%, more than 50% of the municipalities are above 70%, more than 2,000 municipalities above 80%, and more than 200 municipalities above 90% separate collection. So there are still municipalities which are lagging behind. Of course, we are kicking them, please move, because we have to meet the targets, and you have to save money, because it's a matter of saving money with the skyrocketing costs for landfilling and incineration. But also you may see the minimization of residual waste, which should be taken as the new metrics of sustainability, so they are literally getting them close to zero. So thank you very much for this. Thank you very much, Eucharisto Parapoli, and do whatever you may for separate collection of the organics.